Hello, America. Welcome to the Frank and Friends radio show.
Somebody's gotta stand up. Stand up. Somebody's gotta do what's right. We're rising cause we're fed up. Got our house in order and got yours in sight. I am American. That's what I am. That's what I think and what I do. American, that's what I am, and I bleed red, white, and blue. And I bleed red, white, and blue.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your friend and host, Frank George, living and based in Wyoming. And we're down into the teens in terms of the weather. It's getting darn right cold, colder than Los Angeles, California, where I grew up most of my life, and way colder than Guantanamo, Cuba, where I was originally born. And for those of you who may have an interest, I was born in Guantanamo, Cuba. I am currently almost 63 years old. And I came to the United States in 1957. By 1959, Cuba had been completely conquered by Fidel Castro, a man that the people trusted in, but quickly he turned on the people, and that country became a communist country. I do have relatives that live there. I consider myself to be an American and lived here all of my life. I love this country. I'm sorry to see what is happening to our United States of America, because if something of substance is not done very quickly, it too will become a socialist or communist country. I would say that we're actually a socialist country already, have been for a long time. But that last step to full-blown communism, I think, is right around the corner. And I believe that it's very important that we have American men step up to the plate, discuss the issues of the day, and do something about what's going on. Monday night, that was a couple of nights ago, along with some acquaintances from the Constitution Party, I hosted a listening session here in Basin, Wyoming. We will be doing the same thing tomorrow evening in Lovell, Wyoming. We asked the public to come in and to discuss what they felt was wrong with the United States government and what's going wrong with our country. We had a total of 17 people. That was on short notice, and this is a very, very, very small town. I think there is promise that it's all going to grow, these meetings that we're putting on, these listening sessions that we of the Constitution Party are initiating. I believe the American people are tired of what has been done to them by that entire Republican-Democrat dynamic. I don't like it. I've looked at it for a long time. And they say that a definition of stupidity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again in hopes that it will turn out differently. So I no longer do that Democrat-Republican thing. I'm done with that. Was done with it a long time ago, just did not find another place to go to until I finally decided that I'd go to the Constitution Party. This evening, I'm both honored and very pleased to have with us a gentleman who in 2008 ran as vice president, along with Chuck Baldwin, who ran for president under the Constitution Party. And Darrell also happens to be an attorney and a former Marine. That's quite a combination. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome Mr. Darrell Castle.
Thank you very much, Frank. I'm happy to be with you.
Thank you, sir. So you are, I would guess, almost 67 years of age?
65.
65, so you're just a couple of years older than me. We have seen a lot of the same history, you and I, here in the United States.
Yes, it has been quite a history, hasn't it, in our lives?
Oh, my Lord, it has been an evolution in thought and in process, and indeed, I cannot believe what I'm looking at. The United States of today, Darrell, is very different from the one that I came to. It has been radically changed by immigration policies that I don't think favor the people of the United States or the country itself. And, of course, the politics has changed dramatically. When you were, what caused you to go into the Constitution Party?
Well, when I came back from the Far East and was discharged from the Marine Corps, I was basically apolitical for many years. I was going about the business of readjusting and finishing my education, getting a job, getting married, having a child, and so forth. And I had opportunity to meet Howard Phillips, who founded the party. I was very dissatisfied. I was introduced to him by a mutual friend who said, "Why don't you consider my friend Howard Phillips? He's trying to form a third party." So Howard and I got together and we talked, and I was involved in the initial formation of the party, and my wife and I were the first delegates from Tennessee to the first national convention. And, you know, it's really that simple. That's how it started for me. I've been in it ever since. I was in 1991, I think.
Yeah, you were a founding member of, I think at the time it was called the U.S. Taxpayers Party. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, and you know, you would have thought that that would have had mass appeal because of the fact that Americans have always been very unhappy with this system of collecting taxes that has a Gestapo upon us that they unleash whenever they don't like what you've done, and you know, they can take your house away, put you in prison and everything. And how did the party fare in those early days?
Well, we were young and naive then, and we thought we were going to win. We thought that because of our ideas, our platform, and the fact that things were getting worse, that people would flock to our cause and we would, over time, prevail. But we were wrong. I mean, the most votes on a national level for president that any Constitution Party candidate has gotten was the year that Chuck and I ran, and we got about 200, just a little bit less than 200,000, 199 something. So in essence, it's been essentially the same thing all along. It is just hard to convince people, even though they will tell us they agree with what we say, they agree with most of our platform and so forth. Up until now, the Democrats and Republicans have had a very strong appeal. That's starting to change, as I'm sure you're aware.
I think there is massive dissatisfaction with the Republican Party, and a lot of people who were brought up with the ideas that the Republican Party was going to represent them properly, and those that believed in the ideals presented by the Democrat Party had come to realize, number one, that the Democrat Party has been conquered by progressives or communists, if you want to be real about it, and that Republican Party has its number of progressives and appears to be representing something other than the American voter. Would you not agree?
Well, I do. That is the way it seems. I mean, there are a lot of people on the progressive side of the equation, on the Democrat side, who oppose the Democrats because they don't think they're progressive enough. They don't think they've been true to the progressive ideals enough. But on the Republican side, 40% or so of the registered voters who call themselves Republicans, many of those people are dissatisfied. That's for sure. But that is evidence of that is the continual influx of Tea Party members into the Constitution Party.
Well, you know, that again is something else that I wish that we could get more of the Tea Party folks to come to the Constitution Party and help us build it into a larger, more powerful party. The Republican Party, as noted by Rush Limbaugh, because of Karl Rove, seems to be at war. No, it doesn't seem to be. It actually is at war with the Tea Party and with its base. Rush Limbaugh said that the Republican Party wants to get rid of its base. That's the way that he put it. And he had been a staunch Republican for a long, long time. So here you have a fellow who's nationally known on national radio, and he is he's just telling it the way he sees it, that the Republican Party no longer wants a conservative American and is not acting on their behalf, and I can see that very clearly. Can't you?
Well, I can too, and that is certainly the way it seems right now. We've had a large influx here in Tennessee of Tea Party members into our party. About 100 this year have joined the Constitution Party. In fact, the state chairman is an ex-Tea Party person, or I guess he still is a Tea Party person, but there is a movement afoot just underway to take that issue nationally and try to recruit Tea Party members around the country to come and join us and try to affect in some way the 2014 election.
There are a number of people, Darrell, that have said to me that I'm wasting my time in the Constitution Party because it's not powerful enough. It does not get enough voters to make any real change. So I'm voting. I'm tossing away my vote. But I have said to them that I had been a Republican for a long time, and they never represented me. So what was my vote worth there? What do you think of that?
Well, voting for something you don't believe in is the real waste of your vote. I mean, nobody owns your vote. What gives the Republicans the right to have it? Standing for what you believe and voting for what you believe is not a waste of a vote. I mean, it's true that we're not as strong as we would like ourselves to be, but from the beginning we've been about issues. You know, it's one of those things. Though none go with us, we still will follow. We believe very passionately in the issues that are stated in our platform, and that is what this party is about. And you know, it's always been our hope and prayer that people would see that and would join us. But we are not going to the dark side, whether they do or not.
Well, that's good. I think it's important to stand on principle and to live one's life on good, solid moral principles. The Constitution Party, when you folks began it, which was then called the U.S. Taxpayers Party, what was your first issue? Obviously taxes, I would guess.
Well, taxes was the big issue then. In fact, our number was 1-800-TO-VETO-IRS, and there was a lot of emphasis on getting rid of the income tax. The other major issue was we were pro-life, and that, you know, those were the two foundational issues that we started. There are many others. The part that the platform has not changed that much over the years. I've been chairman of the platform committee through 3 different 4-year cycles, so I've seen its evolution, and it's really not that different than it was originally. So those issues are still basically the same.
Okay, let's talk about taxes. That is one of the things that I became most aware of as a young man. And like yourself, I was distracted by many different things going on in my life, so I wasn't very political. And when you're very young, it's hard to understand everything that is going on in politics. Even when one is informed, it changes so rapidly in so many different ways because we're being stabbed in the back by multiple parties on different days at different hours of the day, is the way that I look at it. But when I got my first paycheck there, I looked at it and I saw what a chunk the federal government took, and I was astounded that they would dare to do that. It has only become obvious to me that throughout the decades, you've got this Republican and Democrat thing going on, and you would think that they would get rid of the IRS and that hideous method of collecting taxes that can make a criminal out of everybody or anybody that they desire to do so. They have the power to ruin, and yet they don't do that. Would you not say that that is, and I know you're an attorney, so would you say that that's presentable evidence that none of that is working on the behalf of the American people?
Well, I would. I mean, it is obvious to me that the two parties simply trade power back and forth. Power is a very corrupting thing. They don't want it to change. If they wanted it to change, it would. They like it the way it is. That's why the Republicans are trying to force out Tea Party people and more conservative people. They like the way things are. They want more and more power. They want the government to be bigger and bigger. One can only conclude in any kind of analysis that things are the way they are because these two parties want them to be that way. And they're moving in a very dangerous direction. If we don't, as you pointed out, do something, it will all be lost.
Yes, I think that it all will be lost. And yes, like yourself, I look at it, and many people have described the two-party system as being two wings on the same bird or two faces, two different faces of the opposite sides of the same coin. Nothing changes. It all remains the same, but the American people are squeezed and deprived of the monies that they have earned, and they see the redistribution of that wealth. Redistribution of wealth has been going on in the United States for ages now. Barack Obama may want to increase the amount of redistribution, but the giving of monies from those who have worked for it to people who work for nothing and who exist on monies given to them by the federal or the state government in the form of welfare, and who are expected to vote for the party that gives them the welfare monies, that has been a highly corrupting influence on the process of voting. You know, Darrell, if I were to change anything in the Constitution, I would say that people who are on welfare should not be able to vote. What do you think of that?
Well, it would be an interesting approach. Good luck with that one.
It'll never happen. It will never, ever.
Originally, when the founders were debating the Constitution, there was a proposal that was common back then for only landholders could vote. Mm-hmm. If you didn't own property, you couldn't vote because it was assumed that you had, at that point, you had a stake in who ran the country, who ran the affairs of the nation and so forth. But obviously it's all different now. So you take, the system seems to be, you take other people's money and you use that money to buy half of the people, which will always vote for you because they're totally dependent on you. I mean, it makes perfect sense.
They're voting a paycheck for themselves. They're voting free monies for themselves, but it's always at the expense of somebody who works for a living, and we're having to carry all these people on our backs. And that has reached epidemic levels, toxic levels. I think they're quoting that 47% of the people who voted were on some kind of welfare or something. And
it's an astronomical number right now, for sure.
It is an astronomical number, and I think one can clearly see that this does indeed represent a danger to the republic and to the freedoms of people when you have folks who don't work for a living and they have as much pull as you do, and yet their money comes from your hard work. It is, of course, unfair. Do you think the Republican Party is poised to disappear or to split?
Maybe. I mean, I've heard that for so many years now. I mean, I could certainly see that as a possibility if people on the conservative wing of the party become even more alienated. I could see it as a possibility. I mean, it's a race between whether the entire economic system will collapse and destroy it all, or some other. I mean, it's possible it could go out of existence, but it's also it could could struggle along being a minority party with the Democrats having an extreme majority for decades.
Yes, that's a possibility. You mentioned something. The two parties who have been in power forever have brought something into being that's a hideous beast. That's a more than $16 trillion debt. It's probably closer to 17, maybe 18 trillion at this moment in time, without mentioning other responsibilities that have yet to be paid for. A lot of people have looked at it and they said the United States is going to collapse financially. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there are some things that are inevitable that have to happen because of that debt. I think one of those things is interest rates have to rise. They can't be, not even the Federal Reserve can force them at zero, or as Janet Yellen, the new director, says, less than zero forever. And when interest rates start to rise, if the interest the government was paying on its debt right now went to 6%, it would cost over $1 trillion a year in interest alone, and it's been more than 6% many, many times. I see that as something that is eventually going to happen, and I see the destruction of the dollar coming as an eventuality, basically unavoidable. So, it seems bright right now for a lot of people, but the seeds of our own destruction have been sowed, and they're taking root as we speak.
There were a number of people who attended our meeting in Basin, Wyoming this last Monday who were discussing that very thing. They're preparing themselves for a collapse of the system. And, of course, a number of Americans who have an awareness of how fragile the dollar is becoming bought gold and silver and food and all kinds of different items in the expectation that we're about to become the Weimar Republic, that you're going to need several barrelfuls of dollars to buy a loaf of bread. And that's an unbelievable thing to look at, but or to think about. But Darrell, I ponder that both the tax situation and the weakening of the dollar and this hideous indebtedness, that was all brought to us by the Republican Democrat parties. They can blame each other all day, but they did it together. When before you ran in 2018, along with Chuck Baldwin, we had Mr. Bush in. I think when Mr. Bush first came in, did he not have the Senate and the House on his side?
Well, yes, he had a super majority in both houses for several years, and all he did was make it worse. You're absolutely right.
Yes, I would say to the people of the United States that those were the years or the times when George Bush could have changed the tax system to something that would have favored the citizen and the United States far better than what this ghastly thing is. So that points to the fact that he didn't want to do anything about it, and the Republican Party didn't pressure him to do anything about it. Also, it was a time when I had thought that he would address quite appropriately the issue of illegal immigration, but he made that worse. He weakened border security and allowed more illegal aliens to come into the United States, to the point that tremendous crimes were being committed everywhere, and it's not even talked about in the media. So I've looked at this whole Republican thing, and to me, they're not representing the people. They're representing their own private interests. And what do you think about illegal immigration, and what's the Constitution Party idea on it? I actually do know what it is, but go ahead.
Well, we are very much opposed to illegal immigration. We think the term illegal means illegal, and we don't think it's too much to ask if someone wants to come to America that person come here within the laws that we, the American people, have put into place. It seems obvious to me. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's illegal. So something should be done about it. The president, under the Constitution, is mandated to repel invasion. To me, that says protect the borders. Many presidents have failed to fulfill that duty. It's about time the American people rose up and did something about that. That's our view.
Well, I did just that. We very peaceably tried to address that issue. Among the things that I've done in my life, I've been a Minuteman. I was one of the first to go out there to the border when the call was put out, and we had the very first assembly in Arizona. I can't even remember what year it was, if it was 2005 or what it was. 9/11 had already occurred, and we felt that they had to secure the borders, and they would not. So we went out to the Arizona-Mexico border, and on the way there, my wife and I were listening to the radio, and the soundbite was out there. George Bush was saying that we don't need these vigilantes. And it was extremely disheartening, Darrell, to hear that. This is the President of the United States, number one, calling us vigilantes, and number two, making us seem as if we were, I think, less than American and rational. When we got there, it was Congressman Tom Tancredo who was there to greet us. He's always been a staunch ally in the fight against illegal immigration, and there were a number of other politicians who picked their spirits up, but our president was the one that stuck the knife in our back on that one, and he should never be forgiven for that, really. He had a duty to perform, as you have stated, as have all the other presidents, including Barack Obama, who has now even made border security even more lax, and on his own, through executive orders, given a free pass to illegal aliens. How do you as a lawyer, and I think you practice civil law, you look at this, and I know that you study the Constitution also. I don't think that the President of the United States has the authority to bring about the changes in law that Barack Obama has done just through executive order.
No, he certainly doesn't. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, as it says it is. I mean, these are impeachable offenses in my mind, but that would require the consent of Congress, and that's never going to happen. I think the destruction of the rule of law under Bush and Obama is one of the worst things that those two men have done. They have simply made law a laughingstock. You know, Western civilization is based on the concept that the law applies equally to all of us. It applies to the ruler, to the elected officials as we would see them, the same way that it does to us. And these two men, more than any two other, have turned that whole concept upside down. They've said, we're exempt from the law. It doesn't apply to us. We are the law. That's what the English kings used to do when the British noblemen forced King John to sign the Magna Carta. The law proceeds from his mouth, they said. In other words, his word is law, and we're almost back to that now, if not there.
Yes, I was astounded at what happened with George Bush because I expected more. The first time around, I voted for him, and I was hoping he would do something about taxes and illegal immigration. Time went by, and nothing happened. His second term came, and I voted for him again, and then he turned completely monster ugly on me. And I realized that in the Republican Party, I no longer had a home. Many Republicans felt the same way. They felt like they had been thrown away without much fanfare or ceremony. And at that time, I went independent. I didn't join the Constitution Party. I just went independent. But the time 2008 rolled around, I voted for yourself and for Chuck Baldwin. I did not think that you folks were going to win, to be very honest with you, but I did not want to throw my vote away on either candidate, which I did not like. I did not like Mr. McCain. He was and is very pro-illegal immigration. I don't know who he's in bed with that he has these thoughts. And then, of course, we had Barack Obama, who was reputed to be a communist of some kind. And I wholly believe that this man, Valerie Jarrett and Axelrod, his advisors, are communists. I have no doubts of that. And I'm quite sure that there are members of Congress who have all the information pertinent to the existence of Barack Obama, the truth behind his birth certificate, and who and what he is, and yet we don't hear anything about it.
Well, you're right about that. I mean, the National Security Agency, as we're all aware now, knows everything about everybody. It knows everything about President Obama. It knows everything about the members of the Supreme Court. It knows who they sleep with. It knows whether they like little boys or little girls. It knows whether they like to gamble, whether they drink too much, whether they smoke crack. It knows everything like that about them. And that is so easy to own somebody when you have that information to share up and down the line as you see fit. Someone gets out of line and all of a sudden he's facing a bunch of scandals and he's right back in line. That's the way it seems to go.
It appears, however, that Barack Obama is scandal-proof. There have been allegations of homosexuality which appear to be well-founded if one looks at them. And quite recently, a Christian woman by the name of Mia Marie Pope stepped forward and did an interview with a gentleman by the name of Manning, Dr. Manning. And I don't know if you've seen that interview or not.
Yeah, I have, yes.
Okay, and she alleges that she was one of Barack Obama's contemporaries back there in Hawaii, and that it was well known that, number one, he did not like girls. Number two, he always said he was a foreign student. And number three, that he was a drug user and that nobody could afford drugs in their little group, but that Barack Obama got these drugs from sleeping with older white men, and he used the name Barry Soetoro. He did not use the name Barack Obama, if I remember correctly. So all of this is out there, and this guy appears to be scandal-proof. It appears that we're looking at a show of some kind. Some people have made allegations that it's the Saudi Arabians who finance him and put him in. Others have said that it's the Russian KGB, which now has a different name, I'm sure, that had something to do with it. Some even have said that Barack Obama is an invention of the Central Intelligence Agency. What are your thoughts on Barack Obama?
As far as who financed him or who put him in power, I really have no idea, but I do know that Nobody seems to care about those things anymore, and it's very obvious to me that things are the way they are because that's the way the people in power want them to be. I mean, they own everything. About 4 media corporations own all the media that the vast majority of Americans have access to. I mean, most Americans still get their news from broadcast media, the 4 major networks. These people completely control virtually everything that we see, hear, and so forth, and read. So, I mean, nothing, everything negative about someone seems to be some type of, as you read, some type of tinfoil hat conspiracy. That is the knock on everything. So, you know, most of them are scandal-proof unless they decide that it's time for somebody to go. Then he seems to fall away. But he's a very suspicious man. Nobody knows anything about him. That's pretty obvious. Nobody seems to know where he came from or who he is or how he appeared at Columbia University but didn't really go, and how he ended up as editor of the Harvard Law Review but never wrote anything. He never wrote a single article, which is unheard of as a lawyer, to never write anything and still be on Law Review, let alone be the president of it. It's all very, very suspicious, but nobody cares. That's the problem. Nobody cares about anything except a handful of people who are marginalized as nuts and crackpots.
Okay, let's take a little break, and during that time we'll listen to Mr. Dwight Yoakam sing for us 1,000 Miles from Nowhere, and we'll pick it up on the other side.
Nowhere. Time don't matter to me, 'cause I'm 1,000 miles from nowhere, and there's no place I wanna be. I got heartaches in my pocket, yeah, I got echoes in my head, and all that I keep hearing are the cruel things that you said.
Yeah, but if you look at that, and I agree with you. One of my beefs is that it appears like nobody cares, and yet, do you think that maybe that's because over the years they've realized that no matter what they want, no matter what they feel, they're not going to get representation and action on it, that they've been pummeled down to nothing, along with a percentage who would never care about anything anyways. They would just live under whatever somebody sets up for them.
I think there's certainly a lot of people in the first category that they've been lied to so much that that's affected them, but I think the vast majority of people fit into that second category. They just don't believe it. The media tells them it's not true. That's good enough for them.
Yes, they believe it because it's so. But, we live in an age of technology that has really changed everything. The alternative media that we have before us, the Internet, just like this show that we are using the Internet to put on, there's a lot of people that have turned off on the major media outlets, and I think most of us are older, and they realize that there's nothing but lies there, and that it's a controlled medium, so very controlled that you can't get the truth out of it anymore. And they've begun to change and have exchanges on the Internet, changing perceptions of what's going on. Would you not agree?
Yes, I would agree. I mean, the Internet obviously is our most important media weapon. It's how we communicate with each other. The problem is there just aren't enough of us. I mean, Barack Obama in his re-election got 66 million votes. Despite all of the Internet, the alternative media, despite all of the vast numbers of people who actually really do know who he is and what he is, he still got 66 million votes. And everyone else, all of the third parties combined, get just a tiny little handful. So it seems like there are a lot of people. It's like when you go to church. If you do, you sit in church and sometimes you think everybody's like this. But when you walk outside the church door, you realize it's a big, vast world filled with people who feel completely different than you do.
Yes, that is very, very true. It is conceivable that the reason that third parties are not very large is because they're clinging to principle, and they're not willing to be purchased off by corporations. I believe the Republican and Democrat Party get so much money from different corporations that buy these legislators, these congressmen, who then do things that benefit them. And I don't think the Constitution Party is willing to do that.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly right. The other day, in fact, last Sunday, the front page headlines of the New York Times talked about how Hillary Clinton is going to black people, trying to heal the divisions that were caused between her and them because she opposed Barack Obama for the nomination in 2008. She's going to these people saying, "I'm your woman right now," and who knows what she's promising them or what whose money she's going to deliver these promises with. But yes, we're not willing to do that. We don't go after block voters saying, "If you'll vote for us as a block, we promise you that we will do more for you than any of the other parties." That's just not how we do business, and that makes it difficult to compete. If you stand on principle, that's a big disadvantage in a world that has no principle. Yes,
very, very well put. And of course, if people would know a little bit about Hillary Clinton, George Putnam, the old-time broadcaster who is now deceased, I would hear him in Los Angeles talk about Hillary Clinton, and he said that she is an absolute Marxist, that is what she is. And looking upon her history, she used to hang out with the Black Panthers, and the Black Panthers are communists, both the new Black Panthers, which are an offshoot of the old Black Panther crowd, and the old Black Panthers. Steeped in communism, they had a love affair with Cuba, thinking that Cuba was the place, the paradise, Fidel Castro, the man. And I had discussions with these guys when I was a youngster in California, a youngster being in my 20s and such, and in my late teens. And they refused to understand the realities behind Cuban communism, and they felt that racial injustices had been wiped out and that racism did not exist on the island, but that was just a lie. It was a lie that they were fed. Racism existed there as it did everywhere and anywhere. It's a natural state of humanity in terms of how people interact with each other, and everybody's different with that. But they exhibited to me, a lot of these Marxists and communists that I have met, that they indulge in magical thinking. Because they think that something is so, it will be so, and that's good enough for them. They cannot get their thoughts put together and formulate them and finalize them to see a logical end as to what will actually happen with what they have proposed. And that is one of the problems I've seen with that, plus the fact that communism and super socialism doesn't work anywhere. It has never, ever worked. And now we're the ones that seem to be scheduled to go in that direction. And I would say that if something is not done about Obamacare in 2014, before it hits full, if it's not repealed, Darrell, I think that is it. I think that is the nail in the coffin. We can then declare ourselves a socialist or communist nation. What are your thoughts?
Well, as far as going back to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, I mean, I think they're more sinister than maybe you stated. I think they intend to do what they're doing. They intend to fundamentally change America and eventually see it merged into a world socialist state. That's my view. I think everything they do is done for a purpose. They are intentionally destroying the America that we have known and grown up in and that we have loved, because they want to build their own new America. They want to make it part of this world socialist system that they seem to be so enamored with for one reason or another. That's what they're working for. One world, one government, one currency, one religion. That is eventually mankind's future, I'm afraid. That is what these people are. That's how sinister they are. That is who people vote for time and time again. And as far as Obamacare goes, I think it's probably the worst disaster in American history. It may be irreversible. There is nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed, including Obamacare, if we just had the political will to do it. If our representatives did, if we had the political will to vote them out of office, but we've time and time again, in 2008 when I ran, there were all these scandals going on. The bailout, everybody was outraged because Congress just in your face said, we're doing this whether you like it or not. Every single member of Congress was up for re-election that year. Only 8 of them were defeated. People just time and time again just re-elect these people and vote for their own destruction over and over and over.
But can we be assured that the process of voting even really works anymore? We've gone electronic voting. That was the result of the ACLU and hanging chads or something like that out in Florida. And they instituted this electronic system of voting, which is, some have said that you can change the results of an election rather quickly. So do you think...
You can't be assured that it works anymore because it doesn't. The whole system is totally corrupt. I mean, Democrats and Republicans control access to the ballot. The reason third parties, any third party, us, the Libertarians, the Greens, possibly others, they don't have access to the ballot, and the Democrats and Republicans structure the laws in each state to make it virtually impossible for them to get access to the ballot. They shut off the democratic process to people who might want some alternative view, so that theirs are the only choice people have, really.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I've heard it from a Republican operative in California. We were discussing this very same thing, and he was the state chair. I forget what his name is in California. And he said, no, the laws are structured so that it's very, very difficult for a third party to have an impact. What have you found these laws to be? Have you looked at them?
Well, I've had a lawsuit going against the state of Tennessee over ballot access, trying to get their ballot access laws declared unconstitutional now. We're in our 6th year of litigation, and we have twice won. And they appealed it to the Sixth Circuit, who took it under review So, yes, I'm very familiar with ballot access laws. I mean, we've been, as I said, for 6 years we've been in the courts here in Tennessee, in the federal courts and at the Sixth Circuit, trying to get a ruling that our ballot access laws are unconstitutional. We've had 2 of those in our favor. We won twice, and now it's back before the Sixth Circuit again, and we expect their decision sometime next spring, maybe.
Okay, now I'm not familiar with what ballot access laws are. I'm here in Wyoming, and of course what I've heard is we're going to be running for Secretary of State, our friend Jennifer Young, and we have minority party status here, and if we don't get enough votes for Secretary of State, we will no longer be on the ballot. Is this what we're talking about?
That's true. I mean, Wyoming, I know Jennifer real well, but Wyoming, you don't have many people, so it should be fairly simple, but that's a two-sided coin because you have to travel longer distances to get signatures and so forth. But if she doesn't get enough of a percentage, whatever your state law says she has to get, then you'll have to petition again to get back on the ballot. And in Wyoming, it's pretty simple, but in many states, it's almost impossible. The way the laws are structured, it makes it difficult to impossible unless you have millions and millions of dollars to pay professional signature gatherers to do it for you.
Okay, I begin to understand what this thing, and it's something that others don't quite understand either. So this battle that you've been waging now for 6 years, you're going to be finding out fairly soon, relatively, whether you will triumph or not. And your effort is to do exactly what with these ballot laws?
Well, our effort here in Tennessee is to get a ruling that stands up on appeal that the Tennessee ballot access law is unconstitutional, and that we have qualified for the ballot, and it should be simplified. The qualifications for getting on the ballot should be possible. In Tennessee, no third party in history has ever qualified for the ballot except Ross Perot, who put $20 million of his own money into it. And so we twice got the federal judge to declare the law unconstitutional, and the Sixth Circuit is looking at it right now, but that is essentially what we're trying to do.
Okay, you've had a judge declare it unconstitutional, and so why haven't things changed?
Well, because the state appealed the judge's decision to the Sixth Circuit, which is our federal circuit. Okay.
And it becomes very complicated, and as always, it's an obfuscation and a roadblock to something other than the two major parties. So then if a party loses even minority standing in the state, say if that were to happen here in Wyoming, if we cannot get enough votes, we can still write in the person's name, right, and vote that way.
I mean, I assume you have write-in status there in Wyoming, but you could also just repetition. You know, you just do the signature gathering again, like you had to do before when you originally got minority party status.
That's a hard thing to do. It really is a killer, even out over here. So, okay, I know we've held you over for 15 minutes more than I have said. I had said to you 30 minutes, but we're at the 45-minute mark. If you can stay with me for 15 more minutes, if you have the time. Do you have the time?
I'd be glad to do that.
Okay, Darrell, I want to ask you, who do you think controls America? Because it's not the American people.
All right, I'm sorry. Ask that again.
Who do you think controls America? Because obviously it is not the American people.
No, I mean, to answer that question, I would say that the various international organizations, I know how it sounds to people who don't understand what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that's you, but various international world organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, those types of societies tell the politicians who run America what to do, and I have much evidence of that. Regardless of how crazy it sounds, sometimes the truth is the truth. and their handmaidens in the intelligence organizations who know everything about everybody, who listen to every single phone call that's made by every human being on earth, who record every email, who they know every piece of dirty laundry on every person that they want to know it on. That is the problem. I mean, that's my view anyway. It's what makes it so difficult.
I've seen some of that. I've attended some John Birch Society meetings, and they have been very, very interesting. They presented information, some of which I had seen on the internet before, including that here in Wyoming, Dick Cheney. They showed a little video of Dick Cheney where he admitted that, he was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and had been highly placed, and that he did not divulge that to the voters in Wyoming at the time. And this was Dick Cheney actually saying this, that he had withheld that information with respect to his participation. And of course, we've also had Hillary Clinton has gone to the Council on Foreign Relations. There are a lot of the people who are in power have ties to the Council on Foreign Relations, and it does sound kooky when the person starts looking at it, the notion that these guys are somehow all tied together, regardless of whether they might be Democrat or Republican, but that there is some larger body that they go to, that they seek information or knowledge from or help. But that's factual. It actually does exist.
Well, it is. And the other thing is, people need to ask themselves is what do they think would happen if you had a situation in America where the United States lost its world reserve currency status, which is very possible, given the maneuverings of China right now and our debt and indebtedness to that country and so forth. And we went into a prolonged deflation type of environment with high unemployment and a collapsing economy. What would happen? What would emerge from all of that? There aren't any Thomas Jeffersons and James Madisons walking around out there. At least I haven't met any of them. And so I wonder what type of government would emerge from all of it. What is this new world going to look like when it's reformed by all these wise people from Harvard and Yale and so forth?
Well, I think we have a vision of what they're attempting to do. Some of that is through UN Agenda 21, where they're going to control how you live, where you live.
Exactly right. And
very much what you will do. And all of it really is a mechanism for control. And how well they would fare in terms of doing that, I don't know. The entire world can fall under a communist or socialist type of dictatorship or system. Sometimes I wonder if the folks that are running the show, the ones that really run everything in so many world governments, are actually just using socialism and communism as tools for what their end game might be. And Darrell, it's very interesting to me because a lot of this does sound like crackpot stuff. But in the 1600s, one of the popes decided to divide the world in half. He gave dominance to the Portuguese on one side and to the Spaniards on the other. That's what he decided to do. He made that decision all by himself. He was one of the Borgias, and he became got a new name when he became pope. But this is just an example of organizations and the kinds of decisions that they can make. Now, this is a fact of history that I'm talking about. So what we're looking at today, and when people think that a person might be crazy and talking about organizations that have designs on how the world will function and how it will be, not far-fetched when you look at history, wouldn't you say?
The world, people think about what I just said and the statement I just made and how crazy it sounds because they can't see, they see the world as it is now, and they don't see the world as it might be in the face of disaster. The American people would never have accepted the Patriot Act and the Americans with the ADAA Act and all the other acts that stripped away our Bill of Rights, the invasion of Iraq, the invasion of Afghanistan, and so forth, absent 9/11. But 9/11 did happen. disasters do happen. Everything is okay until it isn't. You know, down in the Gulf of Mexico a few years ago, everything was just fine, and then one day, everything just exploded. Disaster comes, and people beg for relief. No, people would not accept those kind of things if you went up to the average person on the street and said, well, what do you think about surrendering all your rights, your sovereignty, your freedom into a world socialist system? That people would say, you're crazy. But if their security, their survival, their existence, their economic means, their families were all at issue, you know, as Henry Kissinger famously said, if we brought a UN army into California, we'd be lynched, but someday the people will beg for it. That is the direction the world is headed. Things are going to be so bad that people will beg for relief. That's my view. You know, that's the direction I see the world going.
I pretty much echo what you say. I've been looking at this, and I've always been trying to figure out what in the world they're doing. 9/11, there are questions about that. Some people think that, I've gone so far as to think that it was an inside job. I don't know if it was or not. I've looked at some of what's out there. False flag events are something that governments have used to control the people, to sway their point of view. And after 9/11, we got this Department of Homeland Security, which has grown exponentially. We have one of their offices here in Cody, Wyoming. I wanted to visit. My wife would not allow me to. She thinks there's going to be a lot of trouble where we're going, hi, I'm Frank, and I'd like to know what you do. But that in itself might cause problems. But the Department of Homeland Security, along with TSA, appear to be aspects of a paramilitary organization that's been built to control the population of the United States, not anything else, not even to safeguard them, because if safeguarding the people of the United States were important to the government, they would not be bringing in all these Middle Easterners that they bring in as refugees and just on normal visas, and they would have secured the southern border, which is open to terrorists and to millions of people who have made their way over that unsecured border, and it's unsecured because the government doesn't want it secured. So then I can only conclude, Darrell, that the purpose of the Department of Homeland Security and a lot of these other agencies that they've put together, the government has, it has got to be in order to control the people of the United States to a greater degree, because there is a fear that as government progresses with its plans to have greater control over the population, there would be an uprising, and they're ready for it.
Well, that's right. I mean, the Department of Homeland Security is there to make the homeland far less secure. It seems that way to me. It's you don't have to even you don't have to create these disasters. Sometimes you just have to create a system where they become inevitable. The events go into motion, like at the start of World War I, for example. Events around the world happened like clockwork that made the eventual result inevitable. And people say, well, these things are necessary. Well, they become necessary. They become unavoidable, because the events that make them that way were deliberately set in motion.
And speaking of events, one of your podcasts, and I urge everybody to listen to your podcasts. I do. They're about 4 or 5 minutes in length. Some are 3, highly informative. One of your podcasts touched upon the State Department wanting to allow Russia to set up GPS stations here within the United States. Now, to me, coupled with the fact that Barack Obama was caught in an open mic prior to re-election saying to the Russian president, I believe it was, I will have more flexibility after the election. It seems very ominous to me. What do you think?
Very ominous. It's scary, yeah. I mean, and this is not theory. I mean, it was reported widely in the New York Times and other newspapers that, yes, the State Department is seeking authority to let the Russians build these GPS stations to compete favorably with our own GPS people and the CIA says they're really just spy stations. But why our State Department and the administration would want that is anybody's guess, but to me it's pretty obvious.
Well, it's because Barack Obama is a communist. I buy that. I just last night purchased a book called The Little Black Book of the American Left, and it is authored by David. I can't recall if his last name is Horowitz, so I shouldn't say that it's Horowitz. I can't remember the man's last name. He had been brought up as a communist by his parents, and he woke up from that nightmare after he had some negative occurrences, and he flatly states out that people like Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett are communists, and they have the goals that communists have, and that they're ruthless, and that they're elitist, that they think that they're right no matter what, and they're going to push that view upon everybody else, whether they want it or not. They're going to get communism. So to me, it's interesting that the Russians want to set this stuff in here, and it makes perfect sense to me that Barack Obama would allow them to. If ever there was a president that would allow UN troops into the United States to control the population, I would tend to say that Barack Obama is the guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Maybe there's somebody out there waiting in the wings that's worse than he is, but it just seems every time you think it can't get any worse, but it does.
It has become worse. It has become way, way worse. And like you said, I don't know what's going to happen this next voting cycle when we vote for president. I think would be 2016. Is that about when we're scheduled for that?
That is right. Yes.
Okay, Hillary's waiting in the wings, and she's a Marxist, and she is a ruthless individual. Both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama supposedly have left a trail of dead bodies. It was a matter that I noted when I was reading about this gentleman, David, who had been a former communist, and he had a run-in with the Black Panthers, and the Black Panthers were killing some people, and that is something that they do. There are operatives for these people like Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, who I really feel that they have people who will kill for them to advance their agenda, to hush people up, and whatever else needs to be done, the dirty work is done. And I just don't see the future as being very bright unless in 2014 the American people get up and do something about this that is constitutional, but which goes against the grain of what is established. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you're right. There's certainly nihilistic people who don't seem to have any moral understanding and so forth as we do. And it bodes ill for the future of America because right now they're in control and running things. Hillary's got a lot of baggage out there, a lot of scandals follow her around everywhere she goes. Maybe one of them will catch up to her, who knows? But the problem is that the news media, the mainstream news media won't report them and won't dig in like they did against Nixon when she was doing the digging. But time will tell, won't it?
Yes, it will. So 2014 is going to be an exciting year, and I would hope that God helps us because we need all the help we can get. Darrell, thank you so much for having visited with us this evening. Can you give us a website? I know you have a website where you post your materials.
Well, yes, you can get all my stuff on castlereport.us.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to someday meeting you in person. Have a great evening, and thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.